As Canadians witness the complete collapse of the Carney government, as they witness the Liberal Party starting to go into a civil war mode, as Canadians watch as all of the promises and assurances that the Liberal government gave to Canadians fall to pieces, I am reminded of one thing.
But never say never. Never say never.
Welcome back to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. Well, we got a lot to unpack in this episode, all of it about Carney and his government and how they were never going to be able to solve the problems because they're not capable. They just don't have the skill set required to overcome these issues. If they did, we wouldn't be faced with half of them, right? Because it was the Liberal Party that put them into place in the first situation. Like it's the Liberal Party that put them there. If the problems came from there, how do you feel that the source of the problem is going to solve the problem? They can't see it, right? They can't see the woods for the trees. Of course, right now we have three new problems coming. The Liberal Party is beginning to do a lot of infighting. I bet you right now they're wishing that they could have elected to have Mark Carney removed at will. The tariffs coming out of Donald Trump, of course, is just a new wrinkle in how Mark Carney made a lot of promises, a lot of things, he made a lot of boasts. And in reality, the only elbows that he's got is I surrender. They're way up there, way above his head, holding a white flag saying, please, Donald Trump, give me a break. Please, Donald Trump, give me a break. And the other issue, of course, is the union that the Liberal government wants to fire half of, who probably right now are telling themselves, geez, I guess I should have voted for the NDP, or if you had been smart, you would have voted for the Conservatives. Because yes, the Conservatives did talk about cutting many of your jobs. They talked about phasing them out, meaning that when a person left, they weren't going to have that spot replaced. Now we're looking at Mark Carney's business connections, which we don't know about. How much of them are going to be connected to the power supply, to the AI that many of these jobs are being replaced by. Of course, we also want to look at the underlying issue, why Mark Carney is going crazy this way, and how the economy is at the root of most of what we're talking about. Okay, we'll start with the newest thing, the Trump announcement of the new tariffs on other products that are not covered under the trade agreement. Obviously, Mark Carney is not doing what he is asked. He's trying to tell Mark Carney who's in charge of the table, right, which is a negotiating tactic that Mark Carney is unaware of. And I warned all of you that Mark Carney was not going to be capable of solving the problem. He wasn't going to be capable of negotiating a trade deal with Donald Trump because he's operating from this position of participation medal, right? Like he thinks that the Americans owe him free trade. He wants you to believe that the Americans owe Canadians something. You hear Melanie Joly, oh, these illegal tariffs. What are you talking about? It's his country. He can do what he wants with it. Just like Canada can do what he wants when you ignore our borders and just open them wide and now flood the country with people who don't have jobs or places to live. It's the same thing. I can't stand it when I hear them say that, these illegal and unjustified tariffs. Then you turn around and say, no, we're going to put tariffs on other countries that are trying to bring products into our nation because we're trying to defend our green steel industry that creates steel at 3 times the cost of everybody else. And 3 times the cost of steel that has been basically the same process for, 1,000 years. So this Liberal government does a lot of talking out of both sides of its face, and it doesn't ever practice what it preaches. I just don't understand how anybody thought that they were going to be the solution to the problem. When you don't practice what you preach, when you are the one that creates the problem, it's rare that you're going to be the one to solve it. You would have to begin by admitting that you are the cause of the problem, and the Liberal government is refusing to do that. Currently, it's all Donald Trump's fault. Before that, it was COVID's fault. Before that, it's always somebody else's fault. Just like all of their promises are always just around the corner. I'm going to give you a great example. I'm going to solve this problem the day that I'm elected. Vote for me, and I'm going to have Donald Trump at the table, and we're going to hammer out a deal, no trouble at all. Then he goes down into the States a week later, and he's gushing like a schoolboy at a concert. Then it was, well, we got people all over it, nonstop, intense negotiations. Then he shuts down Parliament, which Donald Trump is still working. So I find it very strange that the American president that everybody slams is the hardest working politician on earth right now, certainly in the continent, while the Liberal government is off on vacation. And people are out there going, no, that's not. Oh, wait, yes, that's exactly what it is. And that's who you elected. That's who you voted for. Somebody who felt that it was better to do nothing. and hope that he can stall you, right? Because we know that the Americans aren't putting up with any of their crap. Then it was, oh, well, we're going to see, he promised we'll have it done by the 21st of July, which I doubt very much. Now Donald Trump releases a letter saying, oh, if you don't smarten up on all of the problems that we've been telling you are an issue since February, we're going to be adding more tariffs to everything coming out of your country. Now, before I tell you just how bad that is for the internal economy of Canada, because of a couple of factors that I can lay at the feet of the Liberal government, let's have a look at the letter that Donald Trump. Now, remember, Donald Trump has stated out loud that when he sends you a letter, that's the deal that he's offering to you. When he sends a letter out, he said he wrote 200 letters. He just said it a couple of days ago. So to him, this is a very valid tactic. And to anybody who tries to tell you that it's not a valid tactic, you are not qualified to weigh in on this conversation. And what you need to do is start to realize, hey, wait, is this a valid tactic? Because it absolutely 100% is a valid tactic. It's been used since the beginning of writing. There was a guy down in the Middle East who wrote a letter to another guy who was just up the coast in the Middle East, and they began negotiations that way. Okay, so here's the letter that Mark Carney received from Donald Trump. It's a great honor for me to send you this letter, and it demonstrates the strength and commitment of our trading relationship and the fact that the United States of America has agreed to continue working with Canada despite Canada having financially retaliated against the United States. And it goes on, and he talks about how he's going to put a 35% tariff on starting August 1st, that it's not only about the fentanyl crisis, but the Americans have decided that the Canadians are not doing enough to secure the border. Then he slides in how he thinks that the dairy industry is being unfairly targeted under tariffs without understanding the loyalty that Canadians have to their milk. I think that we can talk a lot about what this indicates is that Canada is not strong at the table. Mark Carney has no choice but to capitulate. Like I've told you from the very beginning, Mark Carney is not capable of winning this contest. I mean, you can see that he calls it a war, then he takes a vacation. I mean, he is not asking, he's asking you to bear the brunt. He's not the one that's bearing the brunt. They must have done something at the table to upset the Americans, and the Americans have decided to, take the newspaper to their nose. Mark Carney, however, had a response to this, and he released this statement on X as a counter to this announcement or this letter coming out of Donald Trump. Now, I'll read this one in its entirety, right? Throughout the current trade negotiations with the United States, the Canadian government has steadfastly defended our workers and our businesses. We will continue to do so as we work toward the revised deadline of August 1st. So now he's trying to paint the picture like it was the 21st, but now we've just revised it to the 1st of August. I don't believe Donald Trump ever said anything about the 21st. It's just not you can't nail it down that way. Canada has made vital progress to stop the scourge of the narcotic in North America. We are committed to continuing to work with the United States to save lives and protect communities in both of our countries. We are building Canada strong, which of course we are not. We get weaker with every second. The federal government, provinces, and territories are making significant progress. Again, it's just around the corner in building one Canadian economy. What progress? If you were making progress, you should be able to point to it. I am looking every day and I don't see any. I see, in fact, quite the opposite. We are poised to, we're just getting ready. We're poised to build a series of major new projects in the national interest. We are strengthening our trading partnerships throughout the world. I mean, what a tepid response to the reaction. He doesn't even really talk back to Donald Trump. Did you notice that? He's only speaking to he's talking to you and I. He's not speaking to Donald Trump. He's not saying to Donald Trump, we've done our best, and if you don't like it, too bad, or anything, any kind of elbows up attitude. That is, yes, sir, whatever you say, sir. That is all this is just capitulation, and he's trying to snowball you and I into thinking that any second now, everything is going to be okay in Canada. We're all working together. First of all, they're not poised to do any of it because they would need to come back to Parliament. Secondly, they're not trading with anybody. Everybody that's talking about trade deals is dealing with the United States of America, who has already made it plain that if you're dealing with him and you're trading with somebody that he doesn't like, he's going to add more money to your trade negotiation. And we can say that Donald Trump is doing this all about the milk. We can say he's doing it all about that narcotic. We can say that he's doing it all a whole bunch of reasons. Let's not talk about what Donald Trump is doing. Let's talk about what the liberal government is doing, or the lack of what the liberal government is doing. How they're all waiting around for Mark Carney to say, oh no, everything is fixed. And meanwhile, all of these industries have begun. There will be no stopping this tariff. We're not going to be the only country on earth that's exempt from tariffs. There's just no way in the world. That would be great, because then all the industry could come to Canada and we could just ship it down into the States all day long. Don't think for one second that the Americans haven't considered that. So stop telling yourself that there's going to be a solution to the tariffs. There isn't. What we have to do is focus on what we can do. How are we reviving the economy in Canada without building any new houses? How are we solving the softwood lumber issue without building new houses? How come we have steel and everything in great abundance, but we're not building inside of Canada? Like the small business that we're not beginning is really what we need to be talking about, and how the liberal government and all of the far left wants control more than they want to solve this problem. Otherwise, they would get rid of the regulations. It's the regulations that slow us down. It's the regulations that cost us money. It's the regulations that drag us backwards in time to the dark ages. The liberal government isn't doing any of that. They're on vacation. They're not addressing any of these problems. Every time they get confronted with, hey, what are you doing about it? It's all, Trump's fault. It's not Trump's fault. And even if it was Trump's doing, that we have to move on now, guys. That relationship is over the way that it was, and keep stalking the individual hanging around their house is just not a good look. So let's move on with our lives. Let's move forward. Let's figure out a way that we can overcome these problems. And I can think of 100. The liberal government, of course, is the biggest roadblock to solving these problems. We have to realize that the problem has been with us for months now, that it's the whole world that's going through it. And the only thing that Mark Carney has is a bunch of promises that somehow, some way it's going to change. Just wait till tomorrow or the day after or the next month or in a few years. And don't worry about it, even though they have removed all of the carbon restrictions off anything coming out of the United States in the EU. Well, we're renegotiating. We're going to be trading with Malaysia, according to David Eby, who is also in pretty heavy negotiations to trade with the United States. Let's talk about the dairy quickly, and I guess I'll have to do a deeper dive into it to flesh it right out for you, but it roughly works like this. They have a few select people that are permitted to give the milk to the certain retailers. The rest they dump down the drain. They dump it down the drain so that they can control the supply, because the supply means that they can control the price, and when they can control the price, then they can guarantee how much money is coming into their pockets. Much the same argument that Donald Trump is using, P.S. The Americans want to be able to bring their product up into Canada that is not going to have those kinds of restrictions, and therefore they will be able to sell it to us at much less money. I mean, it's going to be half. Will they come up in the same format? All of that stuff, I don't really know. Now, the question you have to ask yourself as a Canadian, this is a serious issue for you and I, okay? Because what it represents is something that nobody wants to talk about. They all want to make it about the dairy. They all want to make it about the supply chain management, which is obviously not good for Canadians, the supply chain management. What they don't want to appreciate is that the supply chain management is also tied to the grocery stores, right? So where are these Americans going to sell this dairy? The only place that I can think of off the top of my head is Costco and Walmart. That will mean that they are going to have to open their own supply stores, their own stores. Their own grocery stores are going to have to come up from the various states along the border, from the various chains that are inside of those states. And they're going to have to open up stores inside of the country. And they will then bring in all kinds of American-made product that they will then wish to sell to you. Now, as a Canadian, as just the person who grocery shops, not the banker and the shareholders that own it and desperately try to crush us out with the supply chain management. But the extra competition, I mean, Philip Champagne ran all over the country last year talking about how, or a year before, whatever, talking about how he was down in the States trying to convince the chains to come up to increase competition, and that was going to make a lot of improvements for Canadians. Well, here we are confronted with the same idea. The Americans will bring up their dairy. They'll have no retailer willing to take it, probably except for Walmart. then the next step will be to open up their own grocery store so that they can sell the milk without any worries, which means you and I will all of a sudden have access to grocery stores with less money or with less food, less expenses for the food. So then what are we asking ourselves? Are we asking ourselves that we want to defend all of a sudden this cartel of milk and dairy and this supply chain management? Or do we care only about having decent food at an affordable price? These are serious questions. I get it. It's a big idea, but it's something that we have to talk about. It's something that we have to consider. It's something that we need to address. Of course, as I say it, I hear Donald Trump. Never say never. At first I wasn't going to talk much about the PSAC because the fallout hasn't occurred just yet. And you know, often that I like to wait until the dust settles till I make an opinion on the matter. However, it is now going to add to the internal strife of the Liberal Party. There are going to be a lot of infighting in the Liberal Party between the pipeline that Quebec wants now all of a sudden to put in and how the auto industry is going to have to suspend that 20%. The changes that are coming to the green deals, to the net zero stuff, that's already caused a lot of problems. But now these 100,000 layoffs coming out of the public service union is going to put a lot more pressure on the government of the Liberal Party, because many of them are going to have been from Quebec, primarily because you have to speak French, right? To be able to have it's one of the criteria of getting a job. You got to have good French, and that makes sense. However, the source and the supply of where those French individuals may be coming from, especially along the Ottawa region, many of them are going to have come out of Quebec itself, and many of them are going to have cast their vote for a Liberal person, either in the city of Ottawa or in the city of Gatineau or in the city of wherever along the border with Quebec, indicating that the Liberal Party is going to be getting a lot of pressure from people who now are going to be saying, I voted for you instead of voting for the NDP. I voted for the NDP for the last 4 elections, and now I decided to vote for you so we wouldn't split our vote, and here you are taking our job away. Of course, nobody's asking is Mark Carney, his stock with General Electric, is he going to be given the contract to supply the power to the AI to General Electric and by extension to Brookfield? Is Brookfield going to be taking over the AI for the Canadian government after laying off all of these people, many of whom will never come back due to the fact that their job will be replaced by a machine, by a computer? Nobody wants to be talking about that. Nobody wants to be looking at that, because right now all they see is how the regret they had for not splitting their vote between the NDP and the Liberals. I bet you right now they are begging for more NDP representation in the House of Commons. They're calling union reps. They're doing everything they can do, and they're putting a lot of pressure on the Liberal government, who many of them are going to be seeing that their seat is gone. Now you will have between the environment and between these jobs inside of the behind closed doors, the Liberal Party is tearing each other to pieces. Soon they're going to be publicly blaming one another for all of the collapse that's coming, because there's big problems coming. This is just a small step. Of course, it was naive for you to think that, Mark Carney was going to be able to do anything. I mean, I know many of you are out there thinking, well, Mark Carney is just taking yet another platform from the Conservatives. You can see, and we talked about Pierre Poilievre. I mean, Pierre Poilievre did say he was going to be letting them out, the government, but he was going to let them retire or leave of their own volition and simply not replace the job. When you want to see an example of what's going on with Mark Carney, you need to look at Argentina, where they just are cutting major sections of the government. Don't forget, Mark Carney's trying to make room for his brand new housing and procurement governments. So he needs to get all kinds of people out of the way so that he can put money on that and call it money being spent towards the 5% GDP for the NATO commitment, without ever calculating the fact that one of the biggest issues with Canada's military is that nobody wants to be tone policed. Anyway, that's a different, let's stay focused on how the internalization of the government, the Liberal Party, is going to be pretty much at odds with one another between this layoff of all of these government employees and the lack of the net zero initiatives that are going to be rolling out across Canada. They're all going to be tearing at each other. They're all going to be snapping and snarling. And there's going to be nobody to blame. There's no Pierre Poilievre to blame, guys. It's all liberal. This is all liberals. And I had said that was the only advantage, the only bonus for Pierre Poilievre not winning his seat is that there's nobody for the liberals to blame but themselves. There's nobody for the Canadian population to look at and blame. They're trying to blame Donald Trump, but Donald Trump is just standing his ground, and Donald Trump is dealing with 200 countries at once. It's the liberals that are not looking after the problem. It's the liberals that are not solving the internalized economy. All these people are going to get laid off. They got no jobs to go to. There's no jobs out there, guys. So they're just going to go on to the EI list for as long as they have their weeks. And then they will, I don't know, wait for the handouts that they talk about so much, the universal basic income. Because the liberal government is not going to permit them to open small businesses. The liberal government hates small business. The liberal government wants only corporations that they can deal with their friends over lunch while you and I have crickets. And I hear the PSAC out there saying, oh, no, it's going to impact industry. It's going to impact all the services. And you have to be careful when you're doing this. They don't care. What I really find amazing is how quickly the PSA is now looking to help from the very people that they've been spitting a lot of hate at for years, right? It's your decision to support the Liberal Party instead of supporting the common sense Canadian Conservative Party. And now the people that are on the conservative side of the aisle, you're looking at desperately to bail you out of this impending situation. You have, the leader of Ontario, the president, whatever he's called in Ontario, the amount of hate that comes out of that person. That's just one example. You made it quite plain how you felt about people that didn't support the NDP or didn't support the Liberals. And now you want their help. Now you want their support. Okay, maybe they want to give you the support. Personally, I think you should start with, we made a horrible decision. Please forgive us. We're sorry. I think that's where you should begin the conversation. Whether you do that, I don't know. I don't think that anything is going to change the fact that Mark Carney sees the AI that's going to replace you as a gigantic cash cow for Brookfield. I don't believe that Mark Carney is willing to be the guy because of his ego and because of his personality and because where he got his training from. He's not willing to be the guy that stands by as prime minister while the Canadian economy collapses in on itself and big sections of the country petition the United States for entry. He doesn't want that to be his legacy. And that matters more to him than any of it. If anybody comes out of academia, understands exactly the personality that they're dealing with Mark Carney. And academia is full of people that would rather trip and fall on their face than have anybody think that they didn't have full intellectual control. And that's what we're talking about here. That's what we're looking at. Of course, Mark Carney is taking the conservative platforms because that's the way to economic prosperity, always. Because on the right, they know how to balance your budget. And with a balanced budget, with a balanced economy, with money coming in, everything else is easy to address. Look at all the countries out there in the world that are socialist and dirt poor and ask yourself, how well are they doing? And if they're doing so well, how come many of them are trying to get into the United States, Canada, Britain, and all the other places? So we can see that it's not just one thing that's causing the immediate issues for Canadians. And all the while, with all of these problems going on, the Liberal government, are they sitting in a war room right now figuring it out? Are they sitting around right now trying to hammer it out with their sleeves rolled up and they're doing all those things? Are they working, burning the midnight oil? No. They've gone on vacation. Donald Trump, he's sitting in the White House, going to work every day. Mark Carney, I guess he's tiptoeing through the tulips. I'm not sure. All right, I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.